I'd be curious to know what you think about this, and I totally recognize that I might just be an old person, and it's totally possible. However, I've never been the person to say I don't like new music. I generally prefer new music to old music. That's just not how my brain works.
Right.
However, I do sort of wonder, at least in regards to popular music.
Yeah.
Popular meaning, rock, pop, whatever, any of that stuff, as opposed to like, classical music or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder, what is there really left to be done? I don't feel like specifically in the last 5 or 10 years, like there was so much experimentation.
Yeah.
We've made music as extreme as it could possibly be.
True.
Like, what is there left to do in any genre beyond just remix things?
Well, maybe it's going to become less about the presentation and more about the content. You have some different cultures have different approaches to pop. Let's take Arabic popular music. Quite a lot of it traditionally was more about the lyrics and more about what was being said. Your pop star, in places like Egypt, may not have been your traditional pretty skinny gal. In fact, I've definitely worked on a session when I was a younger engineer where the artist was definitely not a pin-up.
Okay, that's interesting.
And her voice was not even that great, but she was a poet. I couldn't tell you because it was in Arabic, but I was being told that she's a poet. So I'm sitting there going, this is really interesting because these people are spending an awful lot of money on something that is not a Western ideal of a pop star. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Will that be the case for us? Will we start to gravitate to worrying less about the package and worrying less about because we've run out of different ways to present it, quite frankly.
Right.
And will it become more about the content, or will it become simply a case of, I need this dopamine kick, this nutrient of pop. I don't care. I don't care what it is. It's just fitting this box. This does happen already. Maybe we've gone through generations of the same shit over and over.
Yeah.
But it serves the purpose. And I'm not actually saying this is a negative thing. It serves the purpose for the community. And that's perfectly okay with me, because I can go and enjoy something on a level that is about bringing people together just as much as I can go and enjoy something deep that is more of an introspective personal journey. And they're both equally valid. I don't know how one stays interesting beyond a certain point of your life.
Right.
Perhaps you need variation, or perhaps it's natural to just go through it. Like we were talking about earlier, the evolution of a human through music is quite fascinating, because you certainly don't always like the things you liked when you were a child. Some of them hold value, though. Is it just nostalgic value, or do they have a depth to them? And I think maybe some of the older music that still has an anchor in you has a depth to it.
Yeah.
And it is more about that rather than I had a great time, or that was a wicked party that I first heard this. So maybe the longevity of certain things will stick out. But we have a problem. How do we hear these things?
Yeah.
How do we, because there's a million channels now, and it's great that everybody now has their niche. But like we were discussing earlier, that niche creates walls. How do we break those down and have access to something that's on the other side of the valley, or over the hill, shall we say, that we can't directly hear or see? How do we keep an open mind? That may be the biggest impediment to an artist, in fact.
I think there's like a set of people who just sort of inherently seek out new things, which I would say I'm one of those people. Like, doesn't mean that I don't like the things I used to like. It's just kind of like, well, I know that I like that. I don't need to listen to it 100 more times. I would like something new. for me personally. And I think there's a set of people who are just wired that way, and that they will sort of inherently find that those things, and they're the people that kind of help, they're the tip of the spear that helps spread these ideas. But to your point, algorithms are sort of working in the opposite direction, because most people, it's literally, you can read Google's white papers about this. It's literally how it works. It gives you more of what you've demonstrated that you want. And from the perspective of their business, that makes sense. I do think it's interesting. You mentioned with pop, I feel like it's sort of bifurcated. On the one hand, you've got, your whatever, just a set of stuff that just caters to your most base instincts, like WAP or whatever. And I'm not saying that stuff's bad. I like a lot of it. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of pop that has probably the most lyrical depth and the most like genuinely like substantial ideas that have ever been put out in pop. People like dealing with like very real stuff about mental health and whatnot in a way that wasn't really represented in pop until like the last 10 years. So I feel like it's kind of like one or the other. It's either pure dopamine or it's like really heavy shit. I don't mean heavy like chugga chugga. I mean like lyrically heavy.
I guess it can only be a mirror to society,
right?
Which is, we have so many people who have almost had generational trauma. They come from different areas of society that have been repressed, that are now finding a platform openly through pop, instead of it being like you could interpret it that way.
Right.
It's now. It's been commoditized. That's the wrong word. It's become a commodity almost for a label to sell under a certain ideal. For
better or worse, it probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, totally. It's entirely dependent on the individual's interpretation of that. So that's really cool. That's a fantastic thing, or it can be abused.
Look at like drill rap. On the one hand, there's a lot of people who nobody would have been aware, for example, that there's like a gang war in Jacksonville, Florida, if it wasn't for drill rappers.
True.
On the other hand, those people also created a lot of violence.
Yeah.
Or exacerbated it,
It's a strange angle, isn't it? To music becomes part of the scene, if that makes sense.
Life imitates art and vice versa.
Yeah. It's such a weird that, as well as showing wealth and that, you need to be able to show that you're a rapper or an artist. It's something that's, I think is really intriguing in that the whole identity is, the music becomes part of the identity
yes.
Which is exactly the same as, say, a young metalhead picking. Well, okay, I've just made a big leap there. That is not entirely, but it's following a similar path that you identify through that to such a degree that you have to not just imitate, but you have to embody it. Which it's like, say, somebody who was listening to Pantera wants to pick up a guitar.
Yep.
There's a similar thing going on there.
Rappers buy chains, Polyphia fans buy guitars, but at the end of the day, and they show them off, and at the end of the day, it's the same thing.
There's an element of self-identifying through that I agree with totally. Yeah.